Speed Week at Bonneville is a circus on the salt. A place where good old boys...
I work in Calgary, Alberta. I'm in the oil patch.
Rocket scientists...
Right now we're currently working on aerial refueling tankers for the United States Air Force.
And a girl named Katie...
I'm actually a Playboy model.
...come to chase their dreams at full throttle.
If I can get anywhere north of 157, I'll be happy.
Some will break records.
That was awesome.
We're gonna give her all she's got and see what it'll do.
And some will fail.
Super frustrated right now. Very disappointed in the run.
While for others, it's all about looking good while doing it.
And he said, that's the prettiest damn car I have ever seen out on the salt.
All summer long, the Bonneville Salt Flats bake under the blazing Utah sun. But for 1 week each August, the desert comes alive.
All right, everybody. I know you're all ready to go racing.
It's called Speed Week, and this year is the biggest turnout they've ever had. 586 drivers have come to race on the salt. They're here to set land speed records in a wild array of vehicles, from custom motorcycles and rebuilt rat rods to high-tech streamliners that look like rocket ships. If it has wheels, you can find it here this week. Most of the drivers and crew, on the other hand, fit a predictable description. Gray-haired guys in their 50s or 60s, wearing sunglasses and a straw hat. Katie Schellinger does not look like that. Katie is used to turning heads. In fact, she's a professional at it.
I do live webcamming for Playboy, and so you can find me on playboylive.com.
This week, she's hoping people pay attention to her racing.
Excited and nervous.
She's ridden dirt bikes for years, but this is her first time on a bike with this much power.
I know this is a foreign vehicle to you, so just kind of feel it out. I mean, really just ride it on the course. If at any point you have any issues, just stop, okay? I'll send someone out to help you if you have any problems. But just ride to your comfort level, ride it out as best you want to ride it. Okay, Tower, I've got rookie motorcycle 1800.
Start button over here.
To race at Bonneville, rookies have to prove they can handle the extreme conditions. They're required to make a controlled run at less than 150 miles an hour down a 2-mile course. Katie does that perfectly.
Awesome. I think I went pretty fast. I'm used to road racing where you jump off the line and you just want to go as fast as you can. And so this, it's different because you want to just slowly go through your gear. Seemed to go well.
She averaged just 72 miles an hour through the 1-mile-long timing zone. Pretty slow by Bonneville standards, but it's fast enough for her to shed her rookie status and take a shot at the class record. The drivers and mechanics that populate the pits of Bonneville are a smart and ingenious bunch.
Fuel on. Go ahead.
If it's got wheels and an engine, these guys can probably figure out how to make it go fast. But there is only one guy here this year that is truly a rocket scientist. Ken Coe is an aeronautical engineer with Boeing's military division.
Right now we're currently working on aerial refueling tankers for the United States Air Force.
He's come to Bonneville as part of his master's degree.
This is actually my practicum and my practical research, and this will be my final course. So the question I'm trying to answer is, how can you make a car that was designed to go 85 miles an hour and capture a land speed record over 200 miles an hour?
There is plenty of information about the aerodynamics of modern cars, but Ken's project requires some digging.
The research started by going to the Henry Ford Museum and actually pulling the drawings for the 1934 Ford. And I was able to find an original set of drawings.
He discovered that that year's model had some groundbreaking innovations.
The grille is at a 17-degree rake and a 17-degree angle off center. And that provided some level of aerodynamic pull-through, whereas like the 1932 grilles were straight up and flat. And so there's some aspects of the car that are actually favorable for land speed racing.
Ken has made a few tweaks of his own.
The rules specifically say that you have to have an original 34 grill shell. You can cut the bottom off, which allows you to drop the front end as low as you can, but you have to maintain 538 square inches of frontal area. So it's all about figuring out where your geometric limits are on the car based on the rules that they give you.
His redesigned front end is a combination of classic style and modern calculations.
So theoretically, we've designed the car with the gear ratio and the horsepower curve to go somewhere close to 230 miles an hour. The current record's 219,661, so if we can go 220, 222, life is good.
At Bonneville, the salt is white and the sky is pale. Your eyes become starved for color. Maybe that's why certain cars seem to jump out of the landscape. No car gets more double looks and big smiles than one particular Caribbean blue Studebaker that looks fast and pretty at the same time.
Studebakers, the 53 Studebaker especially, is kind of iconic at Bonneville. I mean, if you compare a 53 Studebaker to 53 Chevy or a Ford, you know, the Studebaker is way slipperier.
It's owned by Gord Dreger.
I'm from Bragg Creek, Alberta. I'm in the oil patch. I'm with a company called Alberta Tubular Products. We sell tubing, casing, and line pipe to the oil industry.
His journey from the oil fields to the salt flats started while on vacation in California's Napa Valley.
We were sitting on the deck one day, having a glass of wine, and I heard a race car engine fire up. And I said to my wife, I got to go see what that is.
What he found was a local farmer with a collection of classic cars.
He's got a bunch of race cars, and on the side of his barn, he had this Bonneville car that he was building. And I said, oh, that's cool. I said, you know, that's one thing I've always wanted to do is go to Bonneville, either build myself a Bonneville car or get a Bonneville car. He stopped, he turned around, he looked at me and said, Gord, you're going to be a happy man in about 30 seconds.
He showed Gord a beautiful blue Studebaker that was for sale.
Went and looked at it and loved it, and I had to have that car, so I ended up getting it. Sent it back to Calgary. That was in about April of 2010, and we're down here in August of 2010, racing the first year.
3 years later, he's still chasing the record.
Record for my class is 156.701 miles an hour. My fastest speed last year was 156.066 miles an hour. So I came, you know, within 0.7 miles per hour of qualifying for a record.
Just because it's built for speed doesn't mean it can't look good. While other drivers are tweaking their engines and adjusting their timing, Gord's car is getting a little cosmetic work.
Oh, he just put my name above the door. And I think right now, he was laying down some pinstripes.
Putting his name on the door frame is easy. Getting into the record books will be tougher.
If I can get anywhere north of 157, I'll be happy.
Speed Week at the Bonneville Salt Flats is an annual party that brings hundreds of racers to the middle of nowhere. This week, Katie Schellinger is one of them. She's trying to set a land speed record on a Honda Goldwing motorcycle. But she's not a professional racer.
My day job, I'm actually a Playboy model. People tend to judge about it a lot, so I tend to keep it more of a secret. I've been around road racing my entire life. I was at the road racing track when I was 2 months old. My dad used to road race, and so it's in my blood. I really like going fast.
She's really competitive. I said, I don't know where you get that.
She rode her first motorbike when she was 4.
Pink PW50, a Yamaha 50. And so it had no clutch and no gears, and we live on a little bit of property, and so she couldn't get her off of it, you know.
The purpose of this trip is to race a motorcycle and get a record, but it's also about getting some quality family time.
It's a different kind of place, isn't it?
Yeah.
Like nothing we've ever been or seen.
No, yeah. It's totally different.
Katie has grown up a lot since those days on her tiny pink bike.
Yeah.
She's now ready to race with the fastest riders in the world and challenge a few stereotypes along the way.
Yeah, it's funny because a lot of people that I just meet and they find out that I'm a Playboy model, they make all those assumptions, and I'm just, you know, you assume that I'm just like all the other bunnies, but I'm not. I mean, I'm the biggest nerd, like, of them all. There's a lot more than just the cover here.
We're gonna need a flathead screwdriver, big flat, and we're gonna need I think it's a 5/8 for the carb.
Ken Coe is an engineer with Boeing, which means he's used to working on jets, not jalopies.
Okay, you ready?
But for this week, he's got his hands on a classic ride.
This is a 1934 Ford Roadster. We're racing in the street roadster category, which means all the body panels have to be in their original orientation. Any kind of frame, any kind of motor. It has to have a transmission, has to have 2 headlights pointing forward, has to have a horn, which is not operational. Rear fenders are mandatory, and that's pretty much it.
He spent 5 years building the car from scratch. Now he wants to set a land speed record with it and gather enough new data for his master's thesis. But before any of that can happen, he has to get it to start.
As soon as we come up on temperature on the oil, then we'll start to get the carb dialed in, float bowl settings, idle circuit, and we'll take it from there.
The whole process takes about an hour.
Make it crackle, Dan. Fire it up. All right, here we go.
The engine will start, but it won't idle.
Oh, there was no fuel?
Hey. See what that does for you.
Ready?
Now you're getting the gas.
Too much gas, actually. A ripped gasket is to blame. Making a new gasket is easy, but not everything on a race car is so simple to repair.
We'll try that.
All right, ready?
Fire on an engine can only mean one thing: a fuel leak.
We have a little bitty leak.
It's leaking from the accelerator pump.
It's basically a pump, a mini pump. And so there's a diaphragm and a piston pushes on the diaphragm to create the pumping action.
The diaphragm is cracked. Ken brought hundreds of spare parts with him from Seattle, but that's not one of them. 5 years of work is now in jeopardy of being wasted for lack of a tiny piece of rubber.
Out here on the Bonneville salt flats, you're pretty remote. You got to be able to make changes. You got to figure out what parts you're going to need, what parts you don't need. The design aspect of it, going into it, making it easy to use and things are accessible, high reliable parts, all of that comes into play as you're building it.
Fortunately, 2 pits over, there's another Ford engine and a team that did bring a spare diaphragm.
Here you go, Kenny. Jerry Brown.
Jerry, Ken, thank you very much. I owe you anything?
No, you don't. You're
all right.
welcome to. I hope you win.
All right.
Good run.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Once the new part is installed, Ken will head to the starting line in search of higher learning at high speed. Ken Coe is an engineer from Boeing.
Everything's on. Okay, I need the helmet.
I got it. We got it.
He came to Bonneville to apply his aeronautical experience to the world of land speed racing.
Tuck me in, Kate.
For his first run of the week, he isn't looking for a record.
Gloves. Guys, put them on me.
Just a nice clean run down the course at 200 miles an hour in his 1934 Ford Roadster.
Thank you. I'm going to fire it up.
Like most race cars at Bonneville, the gear ratio in Ken's car is so extreme he can't start standing still. His crew pushes him with a pickup truck until he has enough speed to get into first.
That's what it's all about. They're after 219, set by Hot Rod Movement. That was good. Now we just listen to see if he catches the gears. Oh, he missed the gear there.
On the long course at a quarter mile of 185, third mile 191, fourth mile 198, and 200.883 in the last mile.
All right, you got over 200. Nice. Excellent. Excellent.
6.5 miles away, Ken has brought the car to a stop.
That was awesome. Oh, you are soaked.
But he has no idea what his top speed was.
200.
That's it?
200.8.
Okay, I missed third gear.
Yeah, I heard that. Yeah, that was good.
Ken is here to do scientific research. To his trained eye, even the salt pattern on the fenders provides new data.
The front wheels are kicking up salt, and what's happening is between the gap between the fender and the body, the salt's coming up. But what you're seeing here is the aerodynamics from here are causing an inversion, and the salt's actually going backwards. So that means that's working against me in terms of aerodynamics.
Changing that isn't possible with the tools he brought, so the team decides to run it again, as is. While Ken worries about the direction of the airflow, Gord Dreger is concerned about the quantity.
Well, they got all 4 courses closed right now because of lightning and the winds. I guess there was a real strong crosswind, went through about the 3 or 4 mile mark.
There are strict rules about the weather and who can run in what conditions.
We shut them down at 15, bikes at about 10. Can't run any motorcycles 10 miles an hour. They change lanes.
Vehicles racing at high speeds have very little traction. Even a gentle crosswind could prove deadly.
About 9.2 miles an hour.
Luckily for Gord, the wind is settling down.
I got a 10-minute warning from the tower what was that, 3 minutes ago?
Something like that.
Yeah. They're sweeping the course one last time. They're going to put everyone in position, and then we should be running race vehicles.
On this run, Gord is experimenting with bigger tires.
It's a taller tire. I seem to be stalling out at about 5,300 RPM in fourth gear. The engine's capable of more than that. So if I can still turn 53 or 5,400 RPM in fourth gear with those tires, that'll give me enough speed for a record.
If his engine has enough power to spin the axle at the same pace, the larger tires will cover more ground and give him more speed. But there's always the risk of working your engine too hard.
On course 2, car 653. Driver is Gord Dredeker. It's a 1953 Studebaker. He's running on a 157 record. Mile 1, 136. Mile 2, 146. And at the 3 mile, 150, 284. Not quite there yet.
It's a respectable run, but it's exactly the same speed Gord was reaching with the smaller tires. So it's back to the drawing board. Gord and Ken are racing in very competitive classes. There's lots of people competing, and the records are set very high. Katie Schellinger's situation is more unique. She's riding a Honda Goldwing motorcycle with a bunch of modifications.
It's a 1800cc turbocharged with a sidecar, so it's a pretty specific class when you put all those combinations together.
The bike is virtually one of a kind. That makes the record more attainable. It also makes it a challenge to ride.
It's weird because if you turn left, you're okay, but if you turn right, that's when that third wheel starts coming off the ground, and it's pretty flipped out, really.
Her first time riding it was this morning on her rookie run.
It was really good because I went out and my run was perfect. All my shifts were clear. My takeoff with the clutch was perfect. I stayed tucked the whole time. I went through all my gears. I was at the RPMs that I needed to be at. And then when I hit the 2 mile marker, which is where I need to roll off the clutch slowly and slow down and do all my downshifts, that was perfect.
To break the existing record, she has to average more than 87 miles an hour for the entire timing section between the 1 mile mark and the 2 mile mark.
On course 4, bike 1800. The rider is Katie Schellinger. She's running on a record of just 87 miles an hour. Time as she passes the 2 mile mark, 96.758. That will do it. That bike's headed to impound.
Just take your helmet off, jump off, honey.
The average speed is enough to qualify, but it's not all good news.
I was probably about 500 feet from mile 2. I wasn't completely revved out because you don't want to do that. You'll kill your machine. And I started losing power.
She had enough momentum to coast through the timing light, but it means big trouble for tomorrow's backup run.
My bike will be there until 6 a.m. and then I'll come and pick it up in the morning and I will make my record run. And in that time, we'll keep our fingers crossed that the bike runs perfectly so that I can break a record.
Bonneville is proving to be unlike anything Katie has ever done in her life.
I'm not from this world. I didn't know what to expect. This is all new to me. So the fact that I'm in qualifying for a world record is pretty darn cool.
Speed Week at Bonneville brings all kinds of racers together. There's Lakesters and muscle cars, Streamliners and motorcycles, but the heart and soul of the event is still the classic American hot rod.
I'm hot rod crazy. I love hot rods. And you're looking at a hand-built car, built a little 20 by 20 garage. I don't even own a drill press. I built the car and body for $1,000 5 years ago. Fact. Fact.
You don't have to be a racer to drive a car on the Salt.
I'm an old hillbilly. I'm an old hillbilly. Can't read, write, or nothing.
This is a place for people who think a car should be fun, not just a way to get from A to B.
Salt all over, but don't have salt on it. It ain't Bonneville. It ain't Bonneville. Oh yeah, you gotta have Bonneville.
Larry built his hot rod for $1,000 and drives it like a madman every year. Marlo Triette brought a very different car to Speed Week, one that cost millions but has never been run.
I believe in my own mind that this is the finest land speed car ever constructed.
It's called the Target 550 project because the plan is to go 550 miles an hour.
It's 43 feet long. It weighs approximately 8,000 pounds.
Marlo used to be a driver.
In 1985, I had a Streamliner, and first pass on it here, I lost the rear tire at about 250, and the only thing left of the car was the roll cage and the footbox.
His wife convinced him to leave the driving to others. So for the last 14 years, he's focused his energy on building the ultimate record breaker.
Engines, they're 500 cubic inches. We can make 2,500 horsepower each.
It's unlike anything else on the Salt.
The steering wheel is composed out of stainless steel, and the grips are mastodon tusks bought from the Eskimos in Alaska.
As much as he loves to talk about his creation, there are two questions Marlo won't answer. When will it be ready to race?
We've never had a must-do date.
And how much money he spent on it.
But it's nobody's business. It's mine. I owe nobody.
He says that announcing a deadline or budget limit would force compromises in the production. So for now, racing fans will have to be content with looking at his masterpiece as it sits quietly in the pits. Ken Coe is an expert in aerodynamics, but to set a record at Bonneville, you also have to understand the weather.
Temperature is a little bit lower, the elevation, barometric pressure is a little bit lower. Seems like it's going to be, relative altitude is going to be lower. So yesterday it was about 9,700 feet. Today it's about 4,700 feet, so that's in our favor.
Lower relative altitude means denser air. And since engines burn a mixture of fuel and air, today's weather should give him more power. He'll need it. The record he's trying to break is 219 miles an hour.
We made two good baseline runs yesterday on lane 2, 201 miles an hour each run, had a 13 to 16 mile an hour headwind. Today the wind seems a little flat, so we got that in our favor. And we did some carburetor adjustments to adjust for altitude and temperature, and we're gonna give her all she's got and see what it'll do.
On course 1 at the 2 mile, 180. Mile, 197. Mile 4, 204. At the 5 mile, 205, 114.
All right, we got 5 more miles an hour out of it, up to 205. Came into the 2nd and 3rd mile much stronger than last time. And that's where we, 4 mile, that's where we hit a wall. So at 204 miles an hour.
The problem with Ken's Roadster is that the air resistance increases exponentially as he goes faster.
From like 0 to 100, it's one curve from 100 to 200, and it goes like this. And then you hit terminal, where your drag, your horsepower, and the car equalize, and it's just not going to happen. So one of 2 things happen. You either have to change the aerodynamics of the car to make it less drag on it, more slippery, or you add more horsepower, right? Brute force. So those are the only 2 variables you can play with at that time.
Gord Dreger is another driver playing with those 2 variables.
We were running a little bit rich, so we leaned it out once. That didn't help. Leaned it out again. Still running a little rich. Put taller tires on. I may even decide to go back to my other ones. I gotta figure that out with my crew. The only way to find out is by experimenting out here.
Despite all those changes, Gord is stuck at 150 miles an hour. That would get you a sizable ticket on the highway, but out here, it's well shy of the class record.
The racing's a blast. It does get a bit frustrating when, you know, you're tuning and you're making changes and damn, you got the same speed, you know. So you gotta figure out what's going on, you know. I mean, I went a little bit faster last year and the motor's running good, it feels good. So, gotta figure out what to do.
Regardless of its results on the track, his Studebaker with its Caribbean blue paint job is still a hit in the pits.
Last night, after all you guys had gone home, and I pushed the car out in the salt, and I got the water out, I was rinsing it off, getting all the salt off from inside the wheel wells and everything, and just sitting there. And one of the volunteers, one of the patrol guys that drives around, he drove up, and he stopped, and he said, "You know, I was watching you go by all day today." And he said, "That's the prettiest damn car I have ever seen out on the salt." And he said, "I've seen a lot of cars out here. I've been doing this for a lot of years." I go, "Man, there's a lot of nice cars out here." He goes, "No," he said, "something about that car. I don't know if it's a shape or the color. It just stands out so nice against the white salt." I go, "Well, thanks a lot, man. I appreciate that." You know, so it's pretty nice. I'm having fun.
Gord came to Bonneville to hang out with friends and show off his car. Not getting a record isn't a big deal for him. For Katie Schellinger, on the other hand, not getting a record would be a heartbreaking failure.
So many people have come together to make this happen for me, so I want to make my parents proud. I want to make them all happy for, you know, the things that they gave me to be able to do this. But mostly it's making myself proud and proving to myself that I can finish it up and do it right.
As Speed Week nears its end, Ken Coe, the engineer from Boeing, is still experimenting and still gathering data. But he's no closer to the class record of 219 miles an hour than he was 5 days ago.
We've gone 206 miles an hour, 206, 114. We made a change just to see where we would go relative to some changes we made last year, and we lost 2 miles an hour this morning. Virtually the same conditions as what we ran yesterday at 206, so we know that's the wrong way to go. So we changed it back and made a couple little modifications to the air inlet, and we're going to go make a run this afternoon, and we should be either at 206 or maybe another mile an hour off.
He's run out of things he can adjust on the car, so this will be Ken's last attempt. He'll either set a new world record or go home a failure.
On course number 1, car 6707. Speed for 1 mile, 197. 2 miles, 204. That's good sounding roaster. And speed for 3rd mile, 205, 830. That's Kent Cove from Seattle, Washington.
We're consistent, 206. So we put it back the way it was from yesterday, and we're back to where we were. Hotter, a little more elevation. So now it's all about gear and aero. So we know the engine's good and it's going to do what it's going to do. And it was a good run.
Ken also did one last experiment to try and understand the aerodynamics.
We took a little bit of dental floss and some electrical tape, and we made some little wave indicators as to what's going on with the turbulence around certain critical areas. Up by the nose, right off the hood, right in front of the tonneau cover, and then on the windscreen.
It will be interesting data to study when he's back home in Seattle this winter. But right now, standing in the middle of the Utah desert, there's no escaping the fact that his 5 years of work has ended in failure.
Came here to set a record. We came within 14 miles an hour of that record. Setting your expectations high is good, but also facing reality is humbling sometimes, but it is reality, and we know where we are, and we're not going to push it or try and blow up something just to get a couple more miles an hour.
So for now, he'll go back to his job at Boeing and continue pursuing his master's degree at exactly 206 miles an hour. It's early morning in the impound yard. Every vehicle that qualified for a record yesterday is here, getting ready to back it up.
What are you thinking?
I'm nervous.
Don't be nervous, honey.
It's the last chance to make sure the engines and the racers are ready to make history.
Nervous. Very, very nervous.
Yesterday, Katie laid down a run of 97 miles an hour, 10 more than the record. Now she has to back it up.
This is the one that counts. Yeah, this is the big run. So if I can do things right, then I'm going to be able to make a record. So if I can just have the exact same run I had yesterday, then everything will be perfect. But I'm just nervous.
Katie's nervousness is contagious.
We've done so much recreational riding together and her go-karting on her competition go-kart, but she hasn't raced those items. So now she's feeling pressure of being a real racer, and I like it.
What's our time frame?
I've never seen her quite this way, so I'm looking forward to watching her do it.
I think that he's just feeding off of me, off of my nerves. My parents and I are super in tune with each other, so whenever one of us is upset, the other's upset. Not saying that I'm upset, I'm just really nervous. But I think he's nervous for me just because I'm nervous.
Among the things weighing on Katie's mind is the fuel valve. On her qualifying run, there wasn't enough gas reaching the engine, and she had to coast through the final eighth of a mile.
We talked about some different ways to approach that if it starts to happen again. Instead of running top gear, because we are running a fairly low RPM, We're gonna see if she could downshift one and it might pull through a little harder.
Land speed racing bikes are usually pretty stripped down. The one gauge they do have is a tachometer, a gauge that tells the rider how fast their engine is spinning.
You're okay if you was to run it to 5,000, is that all right?
Yeah.
5,500?
Yeah.
Okay.
4,500 revolutions a minute would probably create enough speed to get the record. 5,500 RPMs is pretty much flat out. It all depends on what kind of a ride Katie wants.
You're in the driver's seat, so you get to make those decisions, and I'm just giving you options that you can think about. And rider's ready and helmet's on, so we're set.
The rider is getting more nervous by the minute.
Katie,
Yeah.
they told us to follow that little bike they're putting on the stand right now.
Okay, well.
Dad, I have to
Number
pee.
10. What?
Do I have time to go pee?
Yeah, right there.
With all the delays and distractions aside, it's finally time to race.
So, Miss Comfortable, how you doing? I mean, she looks so just like at ease, you know? Like, it's no big deal. Look at it, see with a thumbs up. How fast you gotta go?
1,000,000.
Everybody always wants that.
I need to go 86. But I need to go 86.
You will go 86.
I will.
Go faster.
Go ahead and start it up.
Record run motorcycle, 1800. She's going to the 2.
Everything's a go, waiting for him. Helmet. Eyes are down. Eyes ready.
Love you, sweetie.
Katie disappears into the desert. Her dad hops in the pickup to chase her down.
I think I know why she's nervous this morning now, because I think she's going to pull the trigger on that thing a little harder than yesterday. We talked about it last night, that our sponsor yesterday had us governed at about 4,500 RPM. I think she was going to try to run it to about 6,000 today, which should put her well over 100. Hopefully it ran right today. Yesterday we had a little bit of an issue and made a change, so I think we're good. No good? Let's take your helmet off. Jump off, honey.
The run was a mechanical disaster.
I got up to about 5 and I was still climbing and it started doing what it was doing yesterday. And so I shifted into 4th and it said, oh, you, went down to 3.5. And then it...
Shift back to 5th? Or
Yeah, I shifted back to 5th and it just, the tach was all over the place. So right before I got to the 2, I shifted down to get it back up.
Yeah.
And it went back up for a few seconds and then just said.
When a racer fails to back up their qualifying run, they have to start all over again.
Okay, we're heading to go pick up our time.
To break a record, the average of the 2 runs has to exceed the current mark.
It's all right, honey. Part of racing, isn't it? It doesn't always go good, so we don't even know that it went bad yet.
In Katie's case, she posted a first run of 97 miles an hour against a record of 87, so she's got some cushion.
Do we know how many miles an hour we had to run?
87, I don't know.
I think you only had to run 80.
Yeah, but I didn't want to have a,
No,
you know,
a poor run.
88 mile an hour so that, you know, I'm only breaking the record by 1 mile an hour when I know for a fact I can do 115 on that bike.
The final verdict comes on a tiny piece of paper.
Hello, we're
Which course?
Course 3, 1800.
How'd you make out?
We don't know.
Oh, you didn't hear it?
No.
Okay.
Thank you.
Did I
What's it say, sweetie?
mile 279?
Oh,
No,
really?
I didn't make it because it's 87.
Katie's record attempt appears to have come up short.
I knew that was bullshit. Super frustrated right now. Very disappointed in the run. I shouldn't have been able to break that record, and it didn't happen.
You did break the record. You did break the record, honey. It's just barely, but you did break it, okay?
So did I get an average?
Yeah, that's right. And I don't know the number yet, but it appears that you were successful. I know that you're competitive and you wanted it to be a better number than you got, but you got it.
I'm just upset because the bike didn't run how it should have. The bike was running like crap, and for me, it was an awful run. It was awful. For me, there's, I may have broke the record barely, but there's nothing good about that run just now.
It's probably the most unusual victory speech ever given on the Salt Flats. But then again, Katie is a very unusual Bonneville racer. Looks can be deceiving. And people aren't always what you expect them to be. Who would have thought that an aviation expert would fail, but walk away smiling? Or that a Playboy bunny would be angry that her new world record isn't fast enough? Strange things happen at Bonneville, but at least there's no doubt about who's got the best looking car on the Salt.